I am part of a large international family. While I am an only child, my mother was the 14th out of 14 children. So you can imagine the size of my extended family. Making this family dynamic even more complex is that we're spread out across 4 different continents. I have family in Australia, New Zealand, England, Portugal, Sri Lanka, Canada, and the United States. So travel has been a big part of my life for as long as I can remember. However, I didn't really have an interest in travel until college when I discovered photography. I discovered that photography was a way of telling stories through pictures. And I became fascinated with the ability to tell stories about the world through my photography. As an adult, travel and photography continue to be a big part of my life. The love of travel is a gift my mother gave me, one that I share with my husband. And the love of travel in my family isn't limited to the human members. For even my dachshunds, Red and Chloe, are experienced travelers. The second aspect of my life I want to share with you is my professional work as a change management consultant. And if you're sitting there wondering, what on earth is that, you're not alone. I get that question a lot. In a nutshell, when an organization decides to make a strategic change, whether going into a new market or introducing a new product, it's my job to help that organization execute that new strategy. The second question I typically get about my work is, well, how did you get into this line of work? And no, I did not grow up dreaming to become a change manager. In fact, I didn't even know the job existed. I started my career as a graphic designer in marketing and advertising. Then I met a boy named Greg. Then we got engaged, and then boy got a career-changing opportunity in Charlotte. Being young and in love, I agreed to move to Charlotte sight unseen. I got here and I quickly discovered that Charlotte is not the advertising mecca that New York City is. So after the shock of the reality of my life, my new life, wore off, I retooled, redesigned my resume, and sent it to anyone that would accept it. I finally got a job as a process designer, where my job was basically to follow people around and document in process flow format what they did. This work was the groundwork for a large change initiative, and it was supposed to last about 6 months. At the time, I saw this as something I would do until I found a real job. 8 years later, I'm still in change management, and I love what I do. Every project I work on is a new learning experience. I love that I get to play a role in the success of others. And I love what I do so much that a year ago, I enrolled in a doctoral program in leadership and change, where I'm currently doing research to help improve change management practices. My hope is to help organizations achieve a higher rate of success in their change initiatives. Traveler, photographer, change manager, doctoral students. These are some of the titles that explain who I am. I hope this icebreaker speech has helped you learn a little bit more about the story of Dani. Thank you.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guest. So I am actually working through storytelling. I've done 3 out of 5. Today, I had planned to do a story about bringing history to life. However, I found out that I was doing this speech late last week and was so busy that I really just got around to preparing today. And then in preparing, I couldn't seem to come up with a story. In other words, what fit the bill as a speech. So I'd actually thought about just bailing completely. But then I thought, that's ridiculous. We're striving to keep our chapter growing and getting better, so that would not help the process. But I did give it some pretty good thought. But then I thought, no, let me share what was inspiring the bringing history to life as a topic. And in doing so, I would like to inspire people to listen to history. How many people here like to read history books? Oh, okay. Well, then I don't have to inspire you all that much, because what I was going to say is that listening audibly, I've listened to 3 books about the First World War this summer, mostly in my garden. Put my headphones on, I get lost in the garden. I don't even know what I'm doing out there. But because I'm listening to these history books, it really goes by very quickly. I use them when I run. And so I wanted to share with you the 3 books that I've read. They're all on the First World War. Do you know we're 100 years this month since First World War started? Anybody know that? 100 years. Huge, huge part of our history started at that point. The first book I read or listened to was The Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman, which is said to be one of the best books about the First World War. And it is just an incredible book to listen to. And I was going to do the speech on Wilhelm, Kaiser Wilhelm, who was really a major factor in what happened in the 20th century, because the Germans felt really secondary to the French and the British. And Wilhelm, who actually was the grandson of Queen Victoria of England. I had no idea how much incestuous behavior really happened in the monarchies of Europe. I mean, everybody was a cousin to somebody. Absolute insanity, frankly. Maybe that's part of what happened, I don't know. But just an incredible book that I recommend highly. The second one I listened to, Bomber it's called. It's one day in a bombing mission in the First World War. First World War became what it was because of the guns that had been created and the airplanes that had been created, and they just got sort of stuck in this trench warfare because they had these guns that nobody knew were as powerful. When you think about it, the Civil War was not that long before the First World War. Just incredible. They got stuck, basically. Nobody could move because they had these big guns that they had never had before. They used to valiantly walk right into each other and start stabbing. Now suddenly they're able to, shoot from afar, and they had the planes. The Bomber is all about a bombing mission. One day in a bombing mission, from the people who were in the planes to the people who were in the town that got bombed. It's just one day in the whole day of this bombing. Just incredible, the interesting parts of that book in terms of what these planes could do that nobody would have believed at the time. The last book was The Last Man. Jeff Shara has written all these books about wars, and what he does is it's fictional history, which I would also recommend anyone who doesn't like to read history in an inspirational way. The second book, Bomber, was also of that same kind, but this one, he'll take individuals in a certain situation. I've done one with the Civil War, and now this is on the First World War, and he will just follow certain characters 4 or 5 characters through the war. And just a really incredibly interesting way to read and sort of get some insight as to how the participants in war would really feel. I also had the thought in reading these 3 books or listening to them that our love of football is somehow connected to the fact that we haven't, like people like me, have not fought in a war. I know nothing about it, but it's so ingrained in us because of the First and Second World War and Vietnam that we like to see these guys crash into each other. That's why I'm so upset they're trying to take the hitting out of it. My gosh, that's what we like. We like to see them really crunch each other. That's just kind of an aside. But war, I tell you what, war is definitely hell. And the only way you can truly learn that is by reading about it and learning about it. Mr. Toastmaster.